It was a balmy summer afternoon, the kind that just settles over a small town like Harmony Creek and makes everything feel still. At 76 years young, I wasn't exactly tearing up the town anymore. The slow pace of the day suited me just fine. Most of my time was spent right here in my cozy armchair, lost in the pages of a good book, or letting my mind wander back to those days when I was a whirlwind of energy and curiosity. My nephew, Michael, bless his heart, had promised to swing by that day. He's a good kid, always checking in, making sure his old Aunt Carol was doing okay, and I truly appreciated it, especially seeing how some folks my age, well, they don't always hear from their family. But today, Michael wasn't coming solo. He'd mentioned he was bringing his best buddy, Jake. I'd heard the name plenty, but we'd never really had a proper sit-down. Michael always talked about Jake with this real admiration, like he was more than just a friend, more like a brother from another mother. Just as I was lost in thought, the doorbell chimed, pulling me back to the present. Slowly, I pushed myself up and made my way to the door. There stood Michael, tall and strong as ever, with that grin of his that could light up a whole room, and right beside him was Jake, just like I'd pictured, confident, charming, with this little spark of mystery in his eyes. "Hey, Aunt Carol," Michael greeted me warmly, stepping in for a big hug. "This is Jake. Finally got him over here to meet you properly," Jake said politely, offering his hand. His grip was firm, and right away, I could tell this young man had a real presence, the kind that just commanded attention. "Nice to meet you too, Jake," I replied, giving him a smile back. "Come on in, both of you." We settled into the living room, and they started with the usual small talk, asking how I was doing, if I needed any help around the house. I told them I was just fine. Truth be told, their company was the best help they could offer. Having young folks around just seemed to breathe some new life into this old house. As the afternoon drifted into evening, the three of us just kept chatting. They told me about their jobs, their hobbies, their dreams, and I found myself more engaged than I had been in ages. Their energy was catching, and before I knew it, Michael threw out an idea that made me raise an eyebrow. I paused for a moment, thinking about it. It had been a while, that was for sure. Even though I was still pretty mobile for my age, I didn't often venture much further than my port. But something about Michael's suggestion, it just sparked something in me. Maybe it was the thought of doing something different, breaking up the same old routine. "A drive, you say?" I replied with a little playful smile. "Well, I suppose I could be convinced." Michael grinned, looking over at Jake. Before I knew it, we were in Michael's car, an old but well-kept vehicle he'd had since his college days. Jake rode shotgun, and I settled into the back. With the windows down, we cruised through sleepy Harmony Creek. There was something about the breeze, the gentle hum of the engine, and the company that made me feel younger than I had in years. The sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in these incredible shades of orange and pink, and for a moment, I completely forgot how old I was. Then, without any warning, Michael turned off the main road, heading down this quiet, narrow lane I hadn't seen in years. It led to this secluded spot by the lake, a place I used to visit way back when I was a kid. The car slowly rolled to a stop at the water's edge, the calm surface reflecting the colors of the evening sky. It had been so long since I'd been here. This place, it was filled with memories for me. Memories of my youth, of late nights spent laughing with friends, and stolen moments of peace. Being back here stirred something deep inside me, a wave of nostalgia so strong it almost took my breath away. As Michael cut the engine, the silence around us grew, only broken by the soft lapping of the water and the distant chirping of crickets. Jake was the first one out of the car, stretching his arms, and Michael followed right after. They both turned back to me. I shook my head, chuckling softly. "Oh, don't you worry about me. I feel more alive than I have in years. This place, it brings back memories." I hesitated for a moment. I didn't often share stories from my past with anyone, let alone with young men like them. But something about this evening felt different. The fading light, the quiet of the lake, the way Michael and Jake were listening so intently, it all created this space where I felt like I could be more open, more vulnerable. "Oh, you know, the usual things," I said with a slight smile. "We'd come here as kids, swim, talk about life. Then as we got older, well, this place became a little more secret, a quiet spot for folks who wanted to get away from prying eyes. It was a place for things that weren't exactly spoken of in polite company." "Maybe," I replied, my smile widening. Maybe not as much as some, but I had my moments. There was this comfortable silence for a beat. I could practically see the wheels turning in Michael's head. His curiosity piqued. Jake remained quiet, still observing me, but I could tell he was just as intrigued. I nodded, feeling this warmth read through my chest that wasn't just from the setting sun. It's been a while since I felt this alive, Michael. Thank you for this. He smiled, then glanced over at Jake, who nodded in agreement. There was this silent understanding between the two of them, like they'd planned this whole thing. I wasn't exactly sure what they had in mind, but there was this different feeling in the air, almost electric. That's kind of you to say, Michael, I responded, genuinely touched. But I think it's more about the company. The people you surround yourself with can keep you young at heart, and you two have certainly done that for me today. There was something about the way he said it that made me pause. The way both of them looked at me, with this intensity that was hard to describe, made me feel like they saw me not just as an old woman, but as someone still full of life. It was like age just became irrelevant in that moment, and the three of us were simply people, enjoying a quiet evening by the lake, far removed from the expectations of the outside world. The sky had gotten darker now, the first stars starting to peek out, one by one. Jake nodded, and without even thinking about it, I found myself agreeing too. We settled onto the blanket, the three of us sitting side by side, watching the stars reflect off the still lake water. It was peaceful, almost surreal, and yet there was this something in the air, this charged feeling, like the night was only just beginning to reveal its secrets. Side by side under that vast night sky, a sense of intimacy started to build, slowly but surely. It was the kind of intimacy that didn't need a whole lot of words, just the shared feeling of something rare, of being truly present in that moment. I glanced over at him, a little surprised by this sudden vulnerability. Michael had always been the fun-loving, carefree nephew, living in the moment. Hearing him talk like this reminded me that he wasn't the little boy I'd watched grow up anymore. He was a man, with his own thoughts, his own regrets, his own desires. You're still young, Michael, I replied gently. You've got plenty of time to figure things out. Trust me, when you're my age, you realize that all those things you worried about, they didn't matter as much as you thought. There was something about the way Jake spoke that really struck a chord with me. He was right. It was easy for me, at my age, to say that life slows down. But for them, in the prime of their lives, everything must have felt urgent, overwhelming even. They were searching for something, and they had brought me along for the ride, maybe thinking I could offer some kind of wisdom. But what could I really say that would make sense to them in their moment of uncertainty? I let the silence hang there for a moment, carefully considering my next words. I understand where you're coming from, I said finally. It's hard to see the big picture when you're right in the thick of it. But you two, you're smart, thoughtful, and kind. Whatever path you choose, you'll find your way. Jake nodded, his gaze intense, as he added, we all want that, but sometimes it's not about chasing everything. Sometimes it's about appreciating what's right in front of you. His words just hung there in the air, and I found myself wondering if there was more to what he was saying. The way Jake looked at me, steady, deep, with the hint of something unspoken, made me feel like I was part of what he was talking about. It was a strange feeling, one I hadn't experienced in decades. There was no denying the connection we all shared in that moment, but it was uncharted territory, unfamiliar for someone like me who had long left behind those days of flirtation and intrigue. I hesitated, caught off guard by the question. The truth was, there were plenty of things I wished I'd done differently, risks I hadn't taken, moments I'd let slip by. But did I exactly regret them? Not really. Life had unfolded the way it had, and for the most part, I was content. I think I started, choosing my words carefully. I wish I had allowed myself more freedom, to be more spontaneous, to embrace the unknown, to not be so concerned with what was expected of me. But I added, a small smile touching my lips, it's never too late to live like that, even at my age. Jake, who had been quietly watching this exchange, shifted a little closer too, though he didn't say anything. His presence, however, was enough to make my heart beat just a little faster. I hadn't felt this way in years, this sense of being seen, not as an old woman, but as a person with desires, with depth. The three of us just sat there, the boundaries between us blurred by the night, by the intimacy of the moment. For the first time in a long time, I felt alive in a way I hadn't anticipated, and though nothing inappropriate had happened, the air between us was charged with the possibility of something unspoken, something deeper than just a friendly visit. It was a connection that transcended age, time, and expectation. It was about being human, about wanting to feel alive, no matter how old or young you were. The night seemed to grow even quieter as the weight of the unspoken hung between us. There was something different now, something undeniable. The air was thick, not uncomfortably so, but palpable. This awareness that we had reached a crossroads, a moment where intentions were being questioned, and lines could easily get blurred. I was 76 years old, but in that moment, that felt like nothing more than a number. For the first time in decades, I was reminded of what it was like to be wanted. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken possibilities. Michael's grip on my hand tightened almost imperceptibly, a silent question hanging in the air. His eyes, usually full of playful mischief, held a depth I hadn't seen before, a mixture of tenderness and something else, something that made my heart flutter in a way it hadn't in decades. Ache, though silent, was just as present. His gaze flickered between Michael and me, a subtle intensity in his expression. It was as if the comfortable camaraderie of the earlier evening had shifted, replaced by a delicate tension, a shared awareness of something on the verge of blossoming. I, for my part, felt a strange mix of emotions. Surprise, certainly, a touch of nervousness, undeniably, but beneath it all, a flicker of something, excitement? It was a feeling I thought had long faded, buried under the layers of years and routine. And yet here it was, a faint but persistent spark. The night around us seemed to hold its breath, the only sounds the gentle lapping of the water against the shore, and the distant hoot of an owl. The stars above twinkled down, silent witnesses to this unexpected intimacy. It was Michael who finally broke the silence, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I nodded, my gaze still locked with his. My breath caught in my throat. What did he mean? My mind raced, trying to decipher the unspoken question in his eyes. Was this about a late-night drive, a sudden adventure, or was it something more personal? Jake shifted slightly, and for a moment his hand brushed mine on the blanket. It was a fleeting touch, but it sent a shiver down my spine. He looked at me then, his eyes holding a warmth that mirrored Michael's, but with a different quality, perhaps a deeper understanding, a quiet intensity. Their words hung in the air, a shared invitation to step outside the boundaries of my usual life, to embrace something new and unexpected. Fear warred with a burgeoning sense of possibility within me. It was a long time since I'd felt this, courted, and by these two young men, who just hours ago were simply my nephew and his friend. I looked from Michael's earnest face to Jake's steady gaze, and then out at the tranquil lake reflecting the starlit sky. The years seemed to melt away, replaced by a sense of anticipation I hadn't felt since a very long time ago. A small smile touched my lips. "And what exactly," I asked, my voice a little shaky, "did you two have in mind?"